Attention darts fans, after searching high and low, to and fro, from coast to coast on Wine and Toast, the award for best hashtag in the game goes to Dynamite Darts Content. And your winner is the weekly Dartscast, baby. 3 words, Dynamite Darts Content. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the weekly Dartscast, episode number 253. I am Burton DeWitt, and I'm joined by guest co-host Christopher Kempf. Christopher, how are you?
I am well, and thank you for having me on the show again. It's been many, many years since I was last talking to you, so it's great to be back.
I know, and I know you've co-hosted, I think, once before. We've obviously been a guest a few times, but it's been long overdue to get you back in. And welcome. And this is, of course, is the weekly Dartscast, sponsored by Dartwolf. And Alex will be back next week, so enjoy this while you can, because it's going to only go downhill from here. I kid. But let's start, though, with some talking about the Premier League. Final week of the regular season was last week, with Joe Cullen beating Peter Wright to get the last spot in the playoffs in Berlin. How impressed were you with Joe Cullen's debut season in the Premier League?
I was impressed with his final match, in which he knew, in facing Peter Wright, that he had to win the match to advance, and if he didn't, Peter Wright would take his spot. So defeating Peter Wright in back-to-back weeks, 6-1 and 6-4, was just a tremendous achievement of grit and determination, especially in that second match, in which he won 6-4, and it was actually the best match of his for the Premier League for his averages holding throw. He averaged 106, and in no previous match in that Premier League did he average more than 100. So he knew what he had to do, and he got it done. So that is very impressive from just a 1 week standpoint. But for his campaign as a whole, I wasn't really very impressed. I mean, Joe Cullen has reached the semifinal with the lowest group phase average since 2008. It was Adrian Lewis back in 2008 who last had a lower average in reaching the semifinals. So you would expect normally that a 92 average would not be enough to get you to the final matches of the tournament, but this year it does. And it's worth noting also that Joe Cullen was the beneficiary of 2 walkovers, which, if you subtract those from his total, those 4 points that he earned as 6-0 whitewashes, technical 6-0 whitewashes, that brings him down to 20 points and in a tie for 6th with Gerwin Price. So on the one hand, it's very impressive that Joe Cullen got his act together at the last minute to ensure that he gets to the semifinals. But on an objective level, especially compared with Premier Leagues past, it leaves a lot to be desired.
I think that's a fair critique, but I'll play the other side of it, because you can only go with what's thrown at you. And yes, he did get a lot of luck, but he found ways to win matches. And he had a couple very bad performances, the averaging barely cracking 80 on, I think, was it night 11 or night 12 rather, and a couple other poor performances. But most of it was consistently around that 93, 94 average, match in, match out. And when he needed to get results, he did. He was down in 6th place with 3 nights to go, and he got at least 1 win on each of the last 3 nights, 2 semifinals, and that title that he had that drew him back into the top 4 for the first time in a long time, beating the table topper Johnny Clayton in that final, and beating Peter Wright en route as well in a match that, okay, it wasn't the straight shootout that he had in the final night, but it was the equivalent of a straight shootout, because that Peter Wright could have all but clinched it had he gone on, won that match, and won the title that day. So Joe Cullen managed to do what he needed to at the right times. But I do agree with you that he never really hit top gear. You mentioned that 106 average with throw in the match against Peter Wright. And that's what I would have expected Cullen to do more often. We've seen the A game that he can bring. We've seen him average 110 on the floor and occasionally on the Euro Tour before, but he never reached anywhere near his A game this year in the Premier League. And even when he won those back-to-back floor events earlier in the year, he didn't win his A game. He mentioned himself that that's the worst he's ever played in winning a title on the first of those days. So there's still so much more that Joe Cullen had to offer, but he did get it done. He had some luck, but he got the results when he needed to, and that's why he made it into the top four. And yes, okay, Peter Wright tailed off at the end of the year. We'll come on to Peter Wright in a second. Yes, Gerwyn Price was battling injury, missed a day, which was to the benefit of Joe Cullen, as you mentioned, with that whitewash. Michael Smith was probably the most unlucky player in this tournament, throwing some phenomenal performances that couldn't get over the line before finally winning on the final night. But Joe Cullen did what he had to do, and I think there's still more of his game. I was impressed because he was able to win when he needed to win, and that will put him in good stead heading into the playoffs. He has the game to compete with those three people there. We just haven't seen it yet in this Premier League, but we haven't had to, and that's, I think, what really matters. We haven't had yet. He didn't have to play at his best, and he still got to the top four. Let's see if he can play at his best there.
There's no question about that. And winning against the top players in the world, no matter how you do it, will always leave me impressed. But when you tune into the Premier League, especially if you've watched it over the past 5-6 years, you're looking to see 110 averages, just dogfights between the top players of the world where they're just taking lumps out of each other. And that didn't happen this year. I mean, it was a much more competitive Premier League on many levels, but it just did not have the absolute brilliance that we saw in, say, 2015 through 2018. Who knows if those days will come back? But where Joe Cullen taketh, Peter Wright giveth away, and we now have the odd situation of the world champion and the world number one, who has now been excluded from the final night of the Premier League. That's a very, very, for all the years that Phil Taylor and Michael Vergerwe dominated that tournament, very unusual situation. What do you think Peter Wright needs to do to get back into the big TV events and to start being competitive with these top players again?
Yeah, it's a good question. And although weird to think it's actually the third year in a row that the world number one didn't make it to the playoffs. Granted, last year, Gerwyn Price skipped the tournament because he tested positive for COVID before the first set of events. And the year before, Michael Van Gerwen was really just struggling. But it is a bit weird seeing the world number one out. But Peter Wright has been out of form for some time, and there was some signs that maybe he was getting it back. He had a good run on the Euro Tour a couple weeks ago, but still couldn't get it done in the Premier League when it mattered the most. And it seems like I think there is a little bit of confidence missing from his game, and I think that's the most important thing. He needs to get his head back on the way it was for, well, much of the last couple of years, which is why he's the world number one. But he's not scoring as well as he was last year. I don't think he's finishing as well as he was last year. If you look on the Players' Championship events, he's still averaging 98 exactly for the year, but you expect that to be closer to 99, and that might only be a point that we're talking about. But that makes a big difference over the course of the year, because 99 average would be tied for the best of anyone, excluding a couple players who only played one event. He's now instead the fifth highest average. And I lost my train of thought. Hold on.
When there's a traffic jam at the top of the leaderboard in averages, in money earned, in any of the orders of merit, every little advantage you can squeeze out of your game is going to be really important. And, just bumping up your average even half a point is going to win many more games than it would seem just from that tiny numerical difference.
I'm glad you jumped in there while I was trying to get back my train of thought. That's a very good point. Can you explain statistically just what half a point on your averages might add when there is that type of bottleneck?
Sure. Well, when the bottleneck that's occurred in darts over the past couple of years didn't always exist, because you would always have Michael Verhara or Phil Taylor or maybe Gary Anderson well out in front, maybe 2 or 3 points ahead in the long run over all the other players. Now you have a cohort of maybe 10 or 15 different players in between 95 and 100. And when you get up to that 100 average level, that is 100.2 is the average of 115 dart leg. And the more 15 dart legs you can squeeze out of a match, that's more. That just means more legs in which your opponent has to check out in 4 visits against the throw or 5 visits with the throw. So every little incremental increase in a player's long run average just means, just generally means additional legs being won in 15, 14, 13 darters that are just preventing opponents from getting into legs that they would otherwise have expected to win.
And what do you think then, and I guess I'm slightly changing the format of this, but we need to take advantage of having you on while we can. What do you think has gone wrong then in Peter Wright's game? Because Alex and I have talked about this a lot, and my hunch is that it was mostly just motivation and confidence, but that was dragging him down. Do you have any particular insight from what you've seen?
Well, I wish I could get inside Peter Wright's head and maybe tell him which set of darts to use, but I'm not going to go there. If there's one thing I would advise Peter Wright to do in his daily practice and in his preparation for matches, it's to practice the bullseye. One interesting stat that came out of the Premier League is you take a look at the total number of bullseye checkouts throughout the 16 weeks, and Peter Wright's total is 0. Every other player in the Premier League has had at least 2, and 0 from Peter Wright. When you're in a situation where you're expecting to face a lot of last leg deciders or matches decided by 2 or 3 legs, every little advantage you can get out of your game is going to be very important. And for want of a bullseye checkout at the right point in time, Peter Wright could lose the kingdom in a big tournament. The fact that he went 0 for 9 on bullseye checkouts when you would expect him to have at least 2 or 3, 4 for honestly the world number 1 world champion is a bit troubling. It's a small sample size, but still, it has not been since January that you've seen Peter Wright hit a bullseye checkout on a TV stage.
That is a fascinating stat. We'll talk about the Premier League a bit more in the coming weeks as we get ready for the playoffs. But now we'll move on to our first interview of the week, and it's with the former chairman of Matchroom Sport, Barry Hearn. I'm joined today by the president of Matchroom Sport, Barry Hearn. Barry, how are you?
I'm always good and lovely to talk to you.
And likewise, thank you for joining us. It's been just over a year now since you stepped down as chairman of Matchroom Sport, which of course also includes the PDC. What has these last 12 months been for you? It seems like you're still been as busy as ever.
Yeah, I've come to the conclusion I'm not very good at retiring. So I'm desperately trying to retire, but I suppose it's just one of those things. It's been such a major part of my life, my business, for the last 50 years. It's tough to just walk away. So I'm sort of weaning myself off it slowly. So I have been doing a little bit more sport myself, playing cricket, going fishing, playing golf. But of course, the business has also, post-COVID and the return of live crowds especially, we've seen another surge of interest globally. And I've always found that sort of thing very exciting. So I'm still involved on the perimeters of the PDC and other activities within the Matchroom group of companies.
So you mentioned a couple things there that I want to discuss. We'll start with the first thing you mentioned. You've had a chance to play a little bit more sport. It was an interview with your son Eddie at the Crucible where he mentioned your competitive streak and the table tennis battles you had with him and your other children. What, though, would you say is your best sport to play?
Well, currently, I think it changes, obviously. I'm 74 in a couple of weeks' time. So physically, life gets more challenging, as most 70-odd-year-olds will know. But I'm probably better at cricket than anything else. I'm playing for the Essex, which is the county teams of over 70s, and I'm really enjoying that. I love competition in anything, whether it's sport or business, or I just like to win. I don't win often, but when I do, you enjoy it even more. So cricket, I think, would be first. My golf seems to be suffering a little bit at the moment. I'm getting shorter and shorter, but I'm awfully good at fishing, and that's the one that keeps me sane.
Well, always need something to keep us sane. Now, we last had you on the show for our 200th episode, right around when you stepped down, and we were talking about the return, albeit at that point, of reduced crowds as we came out of the pandemic. We had some of those events, Premier League, behind partially closed doors last year, now obviously back to having full crowds. What was that moment like for you, though, when you first got to attend an event with a full crowd again?
Well, the first one was the World Snooker Championships, which is one of our big events we stage each year at the Crucible Theatre in Sheffield. It was an amazing, almost emotional experience, because I think none of us really appreciate what we've got in life until we lose it, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a parent, whether it's a business, And COVID has robbed us of so many of those. And the actual sport being such an important and integral part of my life generally, I'd almost forgotten by the time 2 years has gone round that special thrill you get with maximum crowds, live audience, and the atmosphere that's generated. So it was really significant for us. I think for the fans themselves as well, it was that joyous moment that they were re-entering some type of normality. And it was a situation that they too hadn't realised quite how much they missed the thrill of live sport. And probably why I think business has learned lessons, and people have learned lessons during COVID as well. It was certainly symbolic to us that, whereas profitability drops during COVID, the lessons we'd learned is going to be far more beneficial to us in the long run. And the appreciation of the fan is perhaps the most prevalent of all of those.
And we've seen that appreciation most full throttle the last few months as the Premier League had its first turn to normal campaign in 3 years, going across not just the UK, but as well as to Europe a couple times. And we saw as well a new format for that with the winner on each night. Now that we've got to see it and we've reached the playoffs, how do you think this new format has gone?
It works. And a lot of people said to me when we first came out with this format, doesn't it sound a bit samey? You've got the same 8 guys playing a competition every week for 16 weeks. And then, on a points basis, those guys, 4 of them make the playoffs. When you say it as simply as that, it does sound as though that we're taking a bit of a chance. But what we actually did was create 16 local winners and 16 local heroes. We created a lot more interest amongst certainly bookmakers, and because it was a proper competition that had an end each night. And there was a feeling amongst the Premier League that people were halfway through the Premier League where people were like, let's wait and see what happens at the end. In other words, they weren't instrumental in that whole process. I think it worked. I was surprised how well it worked. The TV ratings are up. The audience appreciation schedules that we monitor, was up. And people felt a bit more involved in the event because there was an actual winner of a show they bought a ticket for on the one-night basis. So it's something that will stay next year and we will continue to monitor, but I was very pleased with it.
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised as well just how well it seemed to work from the fan perspective.
Well, we budgeted a 25% reduction in ticket sales this year because of the COVID effect of whether people were, and also because we've taken a chance on a new format. We actually hit something like, I think it was 8% over the 100% that we were previously getting. That was a very, very serious number, that we would be mad not to take into account.
Well, very good. And speaking of risks, a slightly smaller one coming up this next week as the U.S. Darts Masters moves for the first time from Vegas to Madison Square Garden. Obviously, this was supposed to occur in 2020, but due to the pandemic, postponed for a couple of years. Just how important of a week, though, is it for the PDC in their goal to crack the American and North American market?
I think every year we get more enthusiastic about the American and the North American market, America, Canada predominantly. This is a massive day, and it's not just a massive event because it's in Madison Square Gardens or it's in the Hulu Theatre part of Madison Square Gardens complex, but because when we do the Vegas event, when we analyse our ticket sales, we did pretty good in Vegas, but there was a huge percentage of foreign visitors to Vegas. The Madison Square Gardens event this year, which is just about sold out, which again is another symbolic moment, is so predominantly US customers buying tickets that it's completely different to anything else we've ever had there before. So this is the moment when America starts to embrace darts, in my view. And I think we've got to be very proactive about it as well. And the Americans themselves, everyone's got a part to play. I've always believed that we can make darts absolutely huge in North America. But I think we've got to start again infiltrating from the colleges upwards, as well as in the past we've concentrated on darts leagues and darts players, tournament dart players. We've got to broaden that base, and for that we're going to need help from people that want to be involved in what is going to be a very exciting venture. If we can achieve what we think we can do in America, we have changed the whole face of darts globally. We are getting closer and closer to the golf model of going around the world. We are seeing numbers coming in from areas we've never seen before. And we are admiring the beauty of a sport that has no barriers to entry, which I think is key in these times of additional diversity. It doesn't matter whether you're fat or thin, black or white, Christian or Muslim. It just matters, can you throw darts? And that's the way our sport should be. It's a meritocracy. But this is a major, major move, I think, this weekend. I think people are coming, our Americans are watching a relatively new sport for America that has been so successful around the world. There is no rhyme or reason why it should not work in America. I think we have to embrace it ourselves a little more. We have to invest a little more in the infrastructure in America. But I believe this is a great opportunity for the sport, and I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts.
I definitely agree. And now, speaking, though, of that growing the sport, we talked pretty much every time we have you on, we talk about the growth. But obviously the last couple of years, it's been difficult. But we'll see the return of the World Series events to Australia and New Zealand this summer. And when we had Eddie on earlier this year, at the end of last year, he spoke about pushing the global reach of darts and his plans to get more involved. How have you seen that so far since he's taken over? And what markets do you see as the next? I
mean, the television market is changing. You know, the model of free-to-air stations is lessening, and the subscription niche model, if you like, of streaming services and OTT networks are really gathering momentum. I mean, we've seen Netflix, we've seen ESPN Plus, we've seen Disney Plus. You know, this is not new. So DAZN, in their efforts to be the Netflix of sport, have been really important to us in terms of their growth in places like Italy, Spain, particularly Germany, Austria and Switzerland, which has been humongous, where darts has really become the second biggest sport behind soccer, which is phenomenal. We've seen another resurgence in Holland with Viaplay, another OTT network that's come to us quite recently into the Baltics, Iceland, Poland, Belgium, Holland, and they've experienced enormous numbers. It is a different model rather than the bigger, you know, it's a smaller subscription base for specific niche sports. And I think we're seeing an acceleration. And on the back of that, as Eddie said about the globalization, so Viaplay, for example, are in Scandinavia. And they just came and said, well, you know, we're buying all your darts now. We need a one-off special event just for Scandinavia, hence the Copenhagen Masters, you know. And then this week we're in Holland as part of the Viaplay launch in Holland with the Dutch Masters. we're also seeing more and more inquiries from the Middle East. I know Matt's off to the Middle East quite soon because we've got interest from Abu Dhabi, from Bahrain, from Dubai to go there. And there are only 52 weeks in a year, so we have to be very selective. But we've got more interest coming out of Japan suddenly. We've got more interest coming out of Southeast Asia now that COVID is not so much of a factor. Still a slight factor, but not so much. The World Series, as we all know, is our visiting card to countries to show what we can do and how we can entertain people. But it's being picked up now by so many different countries. We're going to have to be very selective about where we go. But the globalisation plans are well underway, and I couldn't, in all honesty, be happier than where we are. We've got a great team working on it. The players are so brilliant for us. I mean, they work so hard when they go anywhere and selling the sport of darts, and the world is our oyster. So let's hope the next couple of years really establish us as a major global sport.
We mentioned earlier that, and you've said as well, that you're as busy as you've ever been, and part of that is because of your new book, Barry Hearn, My Life, which was published last month. And I'll be honest, I was sent a copy, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But my co-host has read it, so he has some questions. You said it was 3 years in the makings. So was the plan always to finish it once you handed the reins over to your son, or was
No, not at all. No, I wasn't. I was never going to write my autobiography. My daughter asked me to because she'd had twin boys and she wanted some record of what our life as a family had been like, and how the business had developed to show them when I wasn't around anymore, if you like. So she forced me into it, and a lot of the people that I was worried about did die, so it gave me a chance to tell the right stories. And I quite enjoyed the process, but it's not something that I can repeat because it was 3.5 years of my life, and it's a lot of detail, and it is, I hope, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So we'll have to wait and see how it goes down. But I've enjoyed the process, and I quite enjoy the book.
And it seems like so have a lot of people. It's gone down fairly well. It's a Sunday Times bestseller. How pleased have you been with the reaction so far?
Well, it's nice because as much as you might think you know what you're talking about, it's always nice to have other people say well done, isn't it? I don't know anybody who doesn't really like a slap on the back. I'm no exception. And certainly I've been, because I'm competitive and I like to be successful in things I do, and I'm never slow to put the effort in on anything. So I've been involved in this national tour, and it's given me a chance to meet real fans and for them to ask real questions. And in a way, you still learn things from occasions and people like that. You must never stop listening. You must never stop learning. And so the book has had several benefits for me. It's a good legacy to leave my grandchildren because as a family, our life has changed. I think it's put me a little closer to understanding how lucky I've been and perhaps not take myself too seriously. And at the same time, listen to the views of fans who, without that live experience of audience, as we've already discussed, sport is just not the same. So all in all, I've enjoyed the process, and I hope when you read it, Burton, I hope you'll enjoy it because I think it's a pretty good book.
Well, I hope so too, and I look forward to it. Just a couple more quick questions, as this is a darts podcast for our listeners. Can you give them a taste of what to expect in the book from your time involved in darts?
Well, it talks about how I first got involved, and the smartness, if you like, of the PDC that realised they needed specialists to run this business. And people like Tommy Cox and Dick Alex and, they were so instrumental in encouraging me to have a look. And, of course, once I got the bug, as we all do, once we go, we realise, wow, this sport really is something special. There was no stopping us then. And then the main board of Marcus Robertson and Edward Lowy and people like that made the transition easy. It's been described as the greatest business move I ever made, but more importantly, it's been fundamental to me enjoying my sporting life, perhaps more than anything else. And in an industry where there's lots of different sports and 12 or 13 of them have come under the Matchroom umbrella, to be the standout sports success, I think is a story worth reading about.
And then one last question. We saw that you've been on the road touring the country to promote the book the last few weeks. Have you got any more dates in the diary for the tour left now? And what else are you looking forward to for the rest of this calendar year?
Well, I think I've exhausted myself on the tour, and it's been fun. And I think today I have 6 podcasts to do in one day, and I'm honoured one of them is yours, of course. But at the same time, I'm going to spend a lot of this summer playing cricket, playing golf, perhaps a bit of horse racing. I'm going to do quite a lot of fishing. In particular, I'm really looking forward to going back to Nimmo Bay, which is my favourite fishing spot in British Caledonia, British Columbia in Canada. So the salmon, be careful because Baz is on his way.
Well, good luck with that, and thank you as always for your time.
Pleasure. Good luck to you, my friend.
Thanks as always to Barry for joining us. Now let's also talk about the European Tours, the 5th consecutive weekend that there was Euro Tour action, and the winner of the event in the Netherlands was the same guy who won his first Premier League nightly title just right before that, as Michael Smith followed up that Premier League title with a Euro Tour title, his first actually in 5 years. He's now up to number 4 in the FDI Power Rankings, but where does he sit for you right now?
Well, my friend Lendl Feria does a fantastic job with those FDI ratings, but I can get on the rankings game too. And in 2 of the ranking systems that I've devised for the PDC, Michael Smith is number 1. Both in the sense that you take a look at every player's past 200 legs. What have they averaged in those 200 legs? Michael Smith is number 1. 99.40 is his average. Second place is Michael Vergerwe, nearly a 1.5 behind. You take a look also at a metric I've devised called ordinal checkout efficiency, or OCHE, which basically estimates the percentage of legs that a player would expect to win in the Pro Tour in the long run, and that number is 62% for Michael Smith, the percentage of legs he would expect to win, and that ends up translating to about 80% of matches on current form. As far as I'm concerned, for the short term anyway, Michael Smith is the top form player in the world. It's just a strange coincidence that he is excluded from the Premier League just on the basis of his past performances in the first 10 weeks or so, in which he was regularly failing to get over the line to get some points. But you look at the dominance with which he's taken a European Tour title, avenging his defeat against Danny Noppert, and absolutely destroying the competition in 2 Players' Championship titles. He's done it before, and he's proved that he can do it again. So if he continues on this current form, I think he will be the favorite for the World Match Play.
Strong words, and I think it's definitely a justifiable. Obviously, statistically, it's justifiable. But I think even just based on personal opinion, I think it's a justifiable argument that he is the best player right now. He certainly was the best player this past week, and form can be very fickle. Who is the best player can, and as your statistics will show, often does change from week to week. But Michael Smith has gotten points 5 consecutive weeks in the Premier League. It wasn't enough because Doug himself, or that was Doug for him with a bunch of tough luck losses. But the only other players to get points 5 consecutive weeks were obviously Johnny Clayton, who I think at one point did 7 in a row, as well as James Wade. Michael Van Gerwen never made it 5 consecutive weeks getting a point in the Premier League this year. Neither did Peter Wright or any of the other players. So the consistently getting points at the back end of the year, if Michael Smith had been able to do that earlier, he would have been there. And across the board, his stats seem to be good enough. His checkout percentage was 3rd best in the Premier League. His average was 4th best in the Premier League. You would think that over the course of his campaign that would eventually be enough to get done, but he lost so many 6-5s to Michael Van Gerwen, a few other close losses as well. But I'm not going to put him number 1 right now. He certainly in the past couple of weeks has been the best player, but when I'm deciding who do I think is the best player, I try to take a slightly longer view than 200 legs. So I would say that I still think Johnny Clayton right now is playing at a higher standard, at least over that slightly longer period. But I think Michael Smith is right there. He's certainly ahead of Peter Wright right now, and Gurin Price. Price, of course, has been battling some injury problems. Van Guren also battling some injury problems. That's the recent news that he's going to be taking some time off after the Premier League final because he's having surgery. We're not sure exactly how long he'll be out, but he's at least missing the World Cup and some Players' Championship events, possibly missing the Dutch Dart Masters as well. And who knows, it could be a little bit longer. I think right now I would put Michael Smith second. I would put none of the top three in the top three, but I think Michael Van Guren is very close to Michael Smith right now. I think Gurin Price, as he gets back to form, is right there in the conversation as well. So I'll put Michael Smith second. I'm still going to put Johnny Clayton first, but I think it's very tight at the top.
I just want to mention also that Michael Smith, regardless of what he's averaging or what doubles he's hitting, he's now had so far this year a streak of 15 consecutive matches won, and he's now on a streak of another 8. And these are all against top caliber opponents: Damon Hedda, Danny Noppert, Johnny Clayton, Michael Vaccaro. It goes, these have not been easy opponents he's been facing, and he keeps coming out with wins, and that can only bode well for future Pro Tour and TV events. Speaking of the European Tour, we had a very unusual event in that 6 unseeded players reached the quarterfinal. First time that's ever happened in a European Tour event. And we had some very unusual names which we would not have expected to see in a 2022 European Tour quarterfinal, reaching the final day of action. So Burton, which of those 6 players do you think needed it most? Do you think deserved it most? Do you think will benefit most from having that quarterfinal appearance?
Yeah, I think the obvious one to throw out as not at all needing it was the one who ended up making it all the way to the finals, Danny Noppert. Obviously, it never hurts to make a final of a Euro Tour event, especially in your home country. But Danny Noppert has won the UK Open recently, moved into the top 16 in the world, is going to be in all the televised majors for the rest of the year without any question. And it wasn't like he was that struggling for form that he needed a pickup that much. But it doesn't hurt to make a final. So it really comes down to the other 5, I think, that could be said to need it. And I feel like the one who really needed it the most was Simon Whitlock, even though it wasn't enough to get Whitlock into either the World Match Play or the World Grand Prix as things currently stand. It's at least given him a chance entering the final month plus to the qualification cutoff for the World Match Play. He still has a lot of ground to make up for the World Grand Prix, but at least has given him a chance to get back to Blackpool. But more importantly, it makes that World Championship spot so much easier to get because he's currently, as things stand, set to fall out of the top 32 ahead of the World Championships. And that's what happens when you go 2 years without qualifying for any of the other major televised events. Before this weekend started, he wasn't even in one of the Pro Tour spots. He was just outside it. But getting all the way through to the quarterfinals, adding 5,000 pounds to his ranking, he not just moved in, but moved in quite comfortably. He, in fact, as things currently stand, would have been in, even before they expanded the field to 96 players. He would have been in the 16th and final spot by the old rules. Still not safe, but a very needed run. So I think just for that, Whitlock was the obvious answer. But I think the other part is, beating Joe Cullen, who obviously was coming in on a high and playing well to do so. Beating Jamie Hughes, who's been battling injuries as well before that. Yes, his performances dropped off after that. But he got what he needed to, which was to get a few wins under his belt. And that's been a struggle for him. You go back at the beginning of the year, he was playing fantastically the first couple weekends, but he could not win a match. And that's why he was in this predicament. He was playing fantastically, but losing. Now, well, he's still playing pretty darn well. Not as well as he was at the beginning of the year, but he's getting those results, getting some confidence back, and making sure at the very least he gets to the World Championships. So I think for that, I think he needed it the most. But I'll also say, Callan Ritz, he's not kicked on like he did last year. He won 2 titles, and it was a breakthrough year for him. But he's dropped out of the top 16 in the Pro Tour, so he's no longer in the seeds. And he's not been getting as many results as he was last year, but he's starting to come back in some form. Making it to the semifinals, I thought, was very key for him to show that he is still among the elite of the game. He wasn't at his best this weekend, and obviously we won't even talk about that semifinal performance, which was not the first time this year that he just could not do anything in a Euro Tour event. One time it was looking like he might not even average 60 earlier this year. But we'll throw that match out because he might have just run out of steam after. It was a very good weekend for him. He didn't play at his best, but he won 4 matches. He averaged around 90 in all of those, including, of course, beating Michael Van Gerwen. Yes, Van Gerwen was off his game. Yes, Van Gerwen gave him a lot of chances, missing 3 and had a double multiple times in that. But he got results that he needed. So I'll go Whitlock as the one who needed it the most, but I think Ritz as well, because he has been struggling relative to last year, this year, and to get a run to the semifinals was big.
Callan Ritz's semifinal had one of the weirdest stat lines of any match I've ever seen, in which Callan Ritz averaged 76, had 100% of it on his doubles, and 2 massive ton-plus checkouts. Weirdest result I've ever seen in a Euro Tour match. And I will say also, for Simon on Simon Whitlock's behalf, what better way to restore your confidence than to have a 3 bullseyes, 150 checkout? Super cool. I loved watching that. But I think it's worth making a case here for Andrew Gilding. Andrew Gilding, where did he come from? The fact that he has 4 of his 7 highest Euro Tour averages in 2022, for a guy who's been playing it ever since the inception of that tour, is incredibly impressive. And this is a guy who's currently in the top 20, top 25 for just averages over the past 100, 200, 300 legs. He's been on fire this year. And the fact that he was able to reach the semifinal had a huge impact on his ranking position for any number of events that he's going to qualify for. He's provisionally qualified for the World Match Play. He's provisionally qualified for the European Championship. And if we go by the cutoff from 2019, when there were also 13 Euro Tour events, the cutoff back then was 12,000 pounds. Andrew Gilding only needs 500 more pounds just to basically guarantee himself an entry into the European Championship. So he has done phenomenally well, and with some incredible results over the weekend. You know, he really is an unsung player to watch throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like, I mean, he still has work to do, but as things currently stand, it looks like he'll get back to the World Match Play for the first time in 7 years, St. for the World Grand Prix. Real bounce back, and then some.
7-year absence can wreak havoc on your career, and that's an incredible thing to achieve.
Yes, indeed. Now we'll move on to our second of 3 guests on this week's show, and it's with the U.S. number 1, Danny Baggish.
I'm pleased to say I'm joined by America's number 1, Danny Baggish. Thanks for the time, Danny. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Alex. Thanks for having me again.
Appreciate the time, and we're talking ahead of a huge weekend, not just for yourself personally, but darts in America, the US Darts Masters and the North American Darts Championship at Madison Square Garden. How are you feeling just a few days away now from it all starting?
It's another dream, another check off the checklist. Madison Square Garden, man, what an iconic venue. I can't wait.
We'll get into this weekend a bit more later, but let's first go back to when we last had you on the show. It was just after you won your tour card at Q School with the most dramatic of runs on that final day. At what point did it sink in that you were a tour card holder on the PDC circuit?
Yeah, when you kind of walk in the room for the first time and you see, all the top players in the world and everyone that's got their tour card, some rookies, some veterans, some world champions and so forth. It was quite overwhelming at first. So once I walked into the room, it was like, hey, you're here, you belong.
And I remember you did a lot of interviews over the next few days after Q School. There was a lot of interest in you, not just here in the UK, but of course back home in America as well. What was that part of it like, getting all that attention from the media and also from the fans as well?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was like I said, it was overwhelming. Something I wasn't used to. Of course, darts is trying to get bigger in the States, but yeah, a lot of media, a lot of interviews, a few appearances, nonstop. So it was fun. It still is fun, and I look forward to more.
One of the media outlets that reached out to you was the New York Times, one of the biggest newspapers in America. Getting recognition from people like that, did that take you by surprise as well? How much your achievement cut through to the mainstream?
Oh, very much so. Very much so, because it's the New York Times. So it was it caught me off guard a little bit when I was contacted by them, and it just shows that darts is becoming bigger, I think, and we have some huge news that I'll be able to talk to you about in the States, and I think you'll be excited to hear as well.
Look forward to that. Well, not long after Q School, you were playing those first events with a tour card. I remember when we spoke before, we mentioned you played a couple of Players Championship events in Atlanta 2007, 2008 time. Could you draw on any of those experiences, or was this first time being a tour card holder, was that completely different?
It's different. It's just more pressure, first time being a tour card holder, and I think I took it a little too serious to begin with the first year or so, and I just needed to relax, and I let a lot get to me. So yeah, there was a lot more pressure this time.
And for yourself, being from America, the first American to win a tour card at Q School, we can only imagine the sacrifices that would have gone into pursuing this career on the circuit. How tough has it been these last 18 months, spending a lot of time away from home?
It's very tough. It's I kind of see why a lot of the U.S. players like Larry Butler and Darren Young, a lot of them didn't really push to do it when they were able to or are able to, and I kind of see why. It's a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of wear and tear on your body, a lot of travel. You're missing your family, you're missing your kids, and you're missing your friends back home. It has a lot to do with it. I go on the tour, and I've developed and created some new friendships, but there's really nothing that will ever compare to having your American friends around to where they can relate to stuff and so forth. So it was different, overwhelming and stressful for sure.
I remember you said last time we spoke, one of the big rewards for getting that tour card was getting to support the USA in the World Cup. Sadly, last year, the COVID restrictions meant you had to miss out. How difficult was it to miss out on playing in that World Cup last year?
I look forward to those events, the World Cup, the World Championships. I love playing on the stage, period. And to be able to represent your country is something I always dreamed of. And with COVID happening, and I was able to, I was lucky to not be able to travel for the World Cup last year, and I was devastated. And so I made sure that this year that wasn't going to happen. And I can't wait to partner up with my buddy Jules. And we've played pairs together, and we're looking to do some damage.
Yeah, that's right. This year you will get the chance to put on that American shirt, partnering up with a fellow tour card holder, Jules Van Dongen, next month in Frankfurt. How much are you looking forward to that?
We've played pairs and doubles in the States, so we have a lot of fun. There's a lot of we're both comfortable with each other. We both feed off the energy, and it's something we're going to be used to. He's got a taste of the stage now with the Euro Tour, so I can't wait. I truly can't wait, because I don't go in as seeing it as we're an underdog. I go in as we can win every single match, and that might be cliche because a lot of people say that, but I truly believe that Jules and I can do some damage.
You mentioned you've played a lot with Jules. You mentioned you've made some friends here in the UK. You've spent time practicing with a lot of different players, Damon Heta, Ross Smith, Matthew Edgar, Devon Peterson. How beneficial has that been to you for your game to get that practice in with some fellow pros?
Oh, it's been real beneficial. It's something that, unfortunately I don't have here, only because, the United States is just so huge. And even to get someone over here, it's going to be an hour, 2-hour drive just to practice with someone. And so to be able to do it there is huge for me. And I just wish I could get it all the time. I really can. But like I said, it's tough. It's real tough.
Well, let's look back at last year, and towards the end of last year, we did see you start to pick up a few results. You beat James Wade, you pushed Peter Wright to a decider, you got to a last 16 on the floor. As we turn the page on 2021, how did you reflect on that first year with your tour card?
I was upset that there was a break. I was playing so well. I finally got comfortable. I was having fun again. You could see me smiling a lot more, and I got to Danny Baggish again. And when that break came, I thought I was just going to leave off. And then, when I come home and then you get a taste of the family and friends again, and you go back just knowing that you're going to have to leave for a couple months again, it's so hard. And that's why they say this game is mental. But, I'll never give up. I'm always going to give 100%. I'm not going to make excuses no matter what I go through. If I choose to show up on that day and play in these events, then I really need to focus as much as I can.
Good to hear. And while you were back at home during the World Championship, we saw you tweet you were watching the tournament up early in the morning, watching it on TV, the first time watching it at home for a few years, and you didn't like it. You vowed to be back at Ali Pali this year. So I'm guessing missing the Worlds last year, that's giving you that extra bit of motivation to get there this year.
Oh, absolutely. That's the number one venue for me, and I've had a lot of success on there the 2 years I've been. I feel comfortable up there, and I just love the energy. I love the crowd. I love showing what I can do in front of the world, and I really just like the spotlight. I think I'm a better stage player than I am floor. I need to kind of balance that out, but I can't wait to get back. Missing it last year was rough for me, and I'm wanting to get back at it this year.
And you could clinch that Ali Pali spot this weekend. You're in the field for the North American Darts Championship on Saturday, an event which, of course, you won in 2019. You put your name on the map for a lot of people. How much are you relishing that opportunity to compete for that world spot this weekend?
I can't wait. I know that I can clinch that spot coming up, and I feel like I'm a favorite going in. No disrespect to any of the other players, but it's going to be hard. North American dart players have grown. They've gotten better. We've all gotten better, and it's going to be tough. But if I just do what Danny does, I don't see why I couldn't come out on top.
And not just that event this weekend, you're also going to be in the US Darts Masters, going back to when you won your tour card. And I brought up that event, which was postponed last year. You said how much you would love an invite. So how excited are you to play at Madison Square Garden?
Oh, getting chills just talking about it, Alex. It's Madison Square Garden, man. It's unbelievable, and I can't wait. I can't wait just to show up there. I fly in tomorrow morning. I just can't wait to be in New York. It's such an iconic venue, and I'm excited to see who's going to show up. New York's a big city for stars, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see some sports athletes show up. From the Brooklyn Nets, from the New York Knicks, New York Rangers, and so forth. I wouldn't be surprised if they show up and give it a look.
Let's hope so. Well, you've been back in America for the last month. What's the interest been like back home for this US Darts Masters? How do you see it playing out as far as attracting more eyes on darts in America?
I think it's going to be good. I really do. I think it's going to be close to a sellout, if not a sellout. And also not just America, but it's just a simple flight overseas, isn't it? It's like 5 hours. So I've noticed there's going to be a good crowd of Europeans coming over as well. So it's going to be just like a PDC event like it is. You know what I mean? So I can't wait. And for it to be at Madison Square Garden, it just makes it that more precious, man. It's exciting.
And we should say as well, you're coming into this weekend with some form behind you. A few weeks ago, you were back in the winner's circle, winning on the CDC circuit, and you had some awful circumstances why you had to go home early. But what did that win mean for you, and how much did you take away from that weekend to get that title?
Yeah, I was very pleased with how I played throughout the whole weekend. A win, a final, and then a quarterfinal, losing to Joey Linnell, who played unbelievable. I'm excited that my game is back there. It was a little bit unfortunate to kind of open up my eyes to the game of darts again with my son getting in a severe car accident. But I was just kind of having the attitude of, there's life out there. It can be worse. And I'm able to play darts and do it with a smile on my face because, like I said, there's worse things out there that can be happening to all of us. So I took that approach and it worked out for me. And I'm going to continue to take that approach and just enjoy the game and love the game again.
Definitely, and we wish your son all the best as well with the recovery. And you mentioned the smile on your face. We saw that at the UK Open, one of the highlights on the board for you this year, being 5-1 down on stage 2 to John Michael. You survived match darts to 6-1. You win 5 in a row, and we still remember those celebrations, the crowd being behind you. How much of a buzz do you get from matches and moments like that?
Yeah, that was great, wasn't it? I'll never forget that moment. I still every now and then I watch it. I go back and watch it. I do fast forward the first 6 legs just to one part, but who wouldn't do that? Well, a funny story behind that is there was one guy in the crowd who was kind of heckling me when I kind of celebrated and made it 5-2. I came back to the table and his exact words were, "Calm down, Baggish, you're still down 5-2." So a lot of people don't know that. So every time I won and I turned around and looked, I was looking straight at him and he was smiling. I was smiling, and you can hear the crowd get behind me, and those moments, man, those moments I'll never forget, no matter how long I'm on the tour. I enjoy it. You know what I mean? So, I can't wait to create the next one.
Good times. And lastly, before we let you go, I know all the focus is going to be on these next few weeks, New York, Frankfurt for the World Cup. But what is the plan beyond that? Are you planning to commit to the rest of the Pro Tour events you can play? And what does the rest of 2022 look like for you?
Yeah, I'm not gonna give up. That's for sure. I'm gonna make sure that I make the rest of the Players Championships. I'll be at the Players Championship in Niederhausen, and I'm gonna finish out the tour. It's just you kind of got to sit back and look what's gonna happen next year, and say, is this something that you want? Is this something you want to do? And you got to really be full force with it. You have to be 100% committed, mentally stable, emotionally stable, and so forth. So getting a taste of these first 2 years have kind of gave me a perspective on the goods and the bads and what you need to do, what not to do, and so forth. So I'm going to have a sit down with the management team, and we're going to go from there, but we're going to concentrate on the end of this year, and then we'll just kind of take it from there.
Well, Danny, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. We do appreciate the time and enjoy this week. We hope it goes well for you. Wish you all the best for the weekend, the World Cup, and what else is to come in 2022.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks to Danny for joining us this week. Now, it's really a busy weekend. We talked Premier League, we talked Euro Tour, but there was also one other event going on as the second televised event on the World Seniors Tour. Of course, there were a few non-televised events that have gone on as well, occurred. And there was a rather unheralded winner at the Lakeside as David Cameron beat the history-making, record-breaking 16-time champion of the world, Phil Taylor, in the final. But what's been your take, Christopher, on the World Senior event so far? Not just this past weekend at the Lakeside, but the tour.
Well, it's always a nice bit of nostalgia to see the great players from yesteryear meeting each other in matchups you never would have anticipated from 20, 30 years of professional darts. But I'm not entirely sure why there needs to be a World Seniors League other than to basically be an exhibition for the stars of the 80s and 90s and 2000s. Because as Paul Lim has shown, you can keep playing at a very high level up into your 60s. It's not like golf, where Jack Nicklaus would understandably have less power in his swing at age 70 than he did at age 30. The top players can keep performing and beating their younger counterparts in major events, almost indefinitely. I mean, we've never really seen a player, whose competitive ability who was destroyed by his age rather than by dartitis or injury or any number of factors. Watching that final and seeing the fantastic Canadian player Dave Cameron do a pretty thorough dismantling of Phil Taylor makes me wonder did Phil Taylor retire at the right point in his career, or is it just the being away from full-time competitive darts, which has brought his game down to a lower level? I'm not sure what you think about that, but I'm not sure on which side of the question I would go.
Yeah, it's I for the most part, I think I agree. I think for the most part, this tour is a novelty, and I think it's good to have the opportunities for the players to go play, and if they want to go and play where they feel like they can be more competitive at the seniors level, I think it's fine to have the events. But I don't see the need to have all these televised events. I think, the one-off World Senior Championship was a great run down memory lane, which is a bit weird of us talking about the nostalgia of it when neither of us grew up watching these players, because one, like some of them were at their best before either of us were born, but even beyond that, darts wasn't televised in the United States, and we both got into darts this most recent decade. So we're looking at some of these players who hadn't been playing since the 1990s and 1980s, and feeling nostalgia for them. But I guess that's part of the community that darts brings. And we know, of course, the history and what these players did accomplish. But I don't see the need to have all these major events. But if the interest is there and people are going to pay to go watch, and people are going to watch on TV and talk about it, then I don't see a problem with it. But I think I do think where I do disagree is that while age hasn't killed off a career, it is more difficult as you get older to have the concentration needed to play at the highest level. And obviously, I think the biggest reason Phil Taylor is so far off his best is that he has not obviously as motivated for these events, but he's also hasn't had to practice and push himself to make sure he's at his best like he did. And even as he was scaling down at the end of his career, he was still making sure that he was putting in the effort that he needed so that when he did play, when at the Grand Slam, at the World Match Play, at the World Championship his final year, he was able to bring the best out of himself. And that's why even in his final year, he won the World Match Play. He made the World Championship final. Yes, he got blitzed by Rob Cross, but he had some good results on the way to that final. But it gets harder to concentrate as you get older. And while we can see Paul Lim still play and beat someone in a best of five, it's going to be difficult for him as it gets later into the tournament to be able to do that same thing. And if he's at the World Championship, he might get that win in the first round, maybe even the second round. But is he going to win a best of 7 or best of 9? Can he keep that concentration that is needed to win at that level? And that's the question as you get into your later 50s and 60s, that often the answer is no. But I enjoyed the first event that was televised, the World Championship, the World Senior Championships, because I got to see some players I never got to see before. Mm-hmm. I never saw Bob Anderson play at his best, and obviously he wasn't able to play at his best there, but it was still fun to see him throw that 180. It was good to be able to see John Lowe play and other players from before my time, but that was the extent of the novelty for me. Maybe that's because I didn't grow up with these players. If I did, maybe I would care more. Maybe 15 years from now, when Adrian Lewis is playing and James Wade is playing on that as a players who were the top players when I was a kid, or not a kid, but as I was starting to get into darts, maybe I'll care a little bit more. But for me, it doesn't really do that much. The quality is obviously much lower than in the PDC and even the WDF. And to me, it's just a novelty. I don't begrudge people who do enjoy it, but it doesn't really mean much to me.
Sure. I mean, I will, tuning in to watch Bob Anderson throw a 180 and throw ton-plus checkouts in his 70s, being the oldest person to do so on television, that's worth the price of admission for me. But as an actual competitive circuit, which it sort of looks like they're trying to build this up to be, I don't think it holds water, especially when you have qualification criteria which are not exactly clear, and preliminary matches which turned out to have much higher standards than the actual first round matches in which certain players have buys. So, it's always fun to watch, and it is intriguing to think in 15 or 20 years when the players we are accustomed to nowadays become part of the seniors tour, and we can watch, say, Dave Chisnell playing on a seniors tour and look exactly as old as he always has.
Well, we'll see. Well, now let's change focus to another tour, and that's the CDC, as we speak with the CEO of the CDC here in North America, Peter Citera. I'm joined today by Peter Citera, the CEO of Championship Darts Corporation here in North America. Peter, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. It's good to be with you, Burton. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining. Lots to catch up on since we last had you on the show back in, I believe, 2019.
It has been a minute, hasn't it?
It really has. I can't say it's gone quickly because of everything in the last couple of years. We start by touching on this upcoming week, which is obviously an important week for darts here in North America, with the U.S. Darts Masters moving to MSG. It was supposed to occur in June 2020, but has been postponed for 2 years due to the pandemic. Can you believe now, though, that we're finally just a couple days away from the event finally happening?
You know, in a sense, it's real tough to believe because there's been so many fits and starts with it. And in a sense, it almost feels like, it's about time. There's been a lot of hard work that's gone into prepping for it. As you mentioned, there have been fits and starts. We were ready to go. Then COVID happened. Then we were ready to kind of go again. And nobody knew where the situation was going to be with vaccines and masks. And, the 2021 was just an odd year across the United States, and different places were doing things differently. So it was decided to be scrapped there again. And, now here we are, just a few days away. I'm leaving tomorrow and really excited about it.
Well, excellent. It'll, of course, be the first time that some of the world's top players have been in the States since the 2019 event in Vegas. What's the buzz like among the darts fans that you've heard from about the likes of MVG, world number one Peter Wright, Fallon Sherrick, and the other top stars being in America?
Oh, sure. Fans are over the moon about it. There's all kinds of talk on social media. You see posts on Facebook daily, people talking about going and, where they're staying. And, the players have been doing a little bit of media today around the city. And some of the more diehard fans have been kind of going out and trying to find them and track them down and get pictures with them. So it's been a little bit of Sherlock Holmes going on there, but really good. Certainly there's a bunch of excitement, and it's going to translate into a great weekend.
So you mentioned some of the media going on, the players sightseeing. I've seen some of the posts on Facebook and other social media. Tournament getting underway Friday, but what does the rest of the week look like for the players? And is there a lot of interest from the American media to speak with the players and get some time with them?
There is in isolated areas. The PDC has done a good job with the stars, the real top billers that'll get global interest. They're kind of going around the city doing some on-site shoots. There's been some talk about getting them on to Good Morning New York, and so certainly there is some interest, and the PDC's media team has worked pretty hard to try to make that happen. So I definitely expect to see some appearances in the coming days.
Now, we'll come back to the upcoming weekend later, but we last had you on, as we said, back in December 2019 during the World Championship. A lot has happened in the world since then. But for North American darts, I think the first place to start is that since then, 4 players have won their tour cards, 3 through Q School as well as 1 through the Challenge Tour. How good has it been to have 4 players flying the flag for both, for U.S. and Canada combined?
I'll answer that in 2 parts. The first part is it's just amazing to watch the fact that, really it's a validation in a sense of what we're trying to do over here, trying to elevate the top end of the game, trying to get the best of the best beating up on each other week in and week out, that the level of competition can increase, and that just lifts all boats. So, it's amazing to see that, to be able to have a rooting interest that's beyond just who's your favorite global player, but, really, hey, here's a guy from my backyard. Here's a guy that I may have seen at an event, at a tournament. To be able to root those guys on, I think has been great for darts fans in general. For us, of course, it's a double-edged sword, because the success now means that our order of merit won't be used to select the World Cup teams, because they're baked in, it's baked into the cake. You've got the 2 U.S. players, you've got, Jeff Smith, you've got Matt Campbell. On the American side, you've got Jules Van Dongen, you've got Danny Baggish, and so we don't have that spot, and so now it's a way for us. We've got to try to figure out ways to make ourselves more relevant and continue to provide opportunities for the top level of the game.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That with the World Cup. Just a quick question though about Jeff Smith, and I think it applies though for all the players. Jeff Smith won his tour card back at the start of 2020, and it's been well documented the challenges that he's faced, as well as the other North American players having to travel back and forth to Europe during the pandemic. But the fact that he was able to maintain his tour card after 2 years and possibly will keep it again after this year, what does that show about his determination playing the game?
I can't say enough good things. Jeff's just a class player. He's a class act. His talent and dedication are just second to none. But, you did touch on it. It's not just Jeff. Jeff, unfortunately, had the rockiest road. But, Danny having to go back and forth. And the challenge of living in North America and playing in Europe, the UK, Europe in general, where this sport is kind of focused most of the time, that poses a challenge for everybody. You're away from your family for months on end, not just the pandemic time. So certainly, all the props in the world to Jeff. He's a great player and will continue, I think, to earn his card. I think you'll see him on the tour for many years to come. But I can't underscore enough the sacrifice that they're all making, right? Danny being away from his family, from his son, Matt from his wife, and Jules from his. It's just real difficult to do it from with the logistics involved. And so they're following their dream, but there's a lot of sacrifice involved.
Of course, and we'll mention Jules as well. He won his tour card this year at Q School. And after doing so, he posted on Twitter that he owes a lot of his ability to win the tour card to the CDC, which he played last year, won the CDC match play, and allowed him to play a bunch of high-quality matches and gain experiences. For our listeners who are new to the CDC, can you walk us through what it is and what opportunities it provides for players in North America?
Sure, absolutely. So, the cornerstone of the CDC is Championship Darts Corporation, and we run the Championship Darts Circuit, which is the partner circuit in North America to the Professional Darts Corporation. And so, we have 12 events that we host, 6 in the United States, 6 in Canada, and we run on a tour card system just like the PDC does. And so this is actually the first year that our main events are closed to only CDC tour card holders. There was some controversy about that. We made that decision. It was a difficult one to make because we had traditionally had qualifiers on the day of these events in the past where people could walk in and earn one of 16 spots that were reserved for non-tour card holders. But again, in keeping with trying to get the best of the best, just in the same room and beating up on each other, we decided to close the circuit. And so we've seen a lot of interest in our Q School program, which, unlike the PDC, our Q Schools are held in conjunction with other tournaments across the United States. And so, we partner with those events on the Friday, usually sometimes on the Thursday preceding. We run our event where the winner up to top 4 can claim a tour card that will allow them to play on the CDC proper. So, we've had a lot of interest in that. There's a lot of buzz about people wanting to try to test their mettle against the best in the continent. Beyond that, we also have this thing this year we've expanded. It's called the Summer Series. And so these are 4 tournaments that are held in conjunction with other tournaments that anyone can enter. We just had our first, which was the Cascades Classic. I actually flew out to Portland, Oregon last Thursday to run that event. It was our set play tournament. So they each have their own little thing. We have a set play event. We have a match play event. We have a UK Open style redraw event. We have a double in, double out event. And so those are open to anybody. So, there'll be tour card holders in those events too, but anyone can enter up to our maximum field. So we're trying to create opportunities not just for the tour card holders, but also for, the next level, the people that are trying to come up through the ranks. So we'll do some more of that in the future as well.
And part of that, of course, creating opportunities is creating opportunities for women as well. As earlier this year, there was a 3-year deal announced between the CDC and the North American Women's Darts Association, which will allow 2 female players to play on the CDC tour, I think starting next year. I guess you can confirm that. But how important do you think that move will be for help growing women's darts in North America?
I hope that it really will elevate the game and generate interest in the NADA tournaments as they grow as well. We've had women tour card holders in the CDC in the past. Callie West, Robin Curry, Brenda Rausch, Tanya Benchich. We've had people representing. It's really important to us that the women's game does become more in vogue and certainly become more of a force to be reckoned with. It's real difficult, though. People have talked to me a lot and my other partners about, when are you going to start a women's tour? If I had the resources, we'd do that tomorrow. But unfortunately, given the limited budget, limited staff, we can't do it ourselves. And so this is a way for us to really kind of add, sweeten the pot for a partner organization. They can do some of the lift. And hopefully, again, it turns out real well for those players, and they take advantage of the opportunity to play in our tours next year.
Excellent. And we'll come back to this weekend in a second, but one more question about last weekend. We got to see a North American win a televised event in the UK as David Cameron won the World Seniors Masters at the Lakeside, beating 16-time world champion Phil Taylor in the final. Did you manage to catch any of the event, and what did you make of his run, especially capping it off by beating arguably the greatest player of all time in the final?
I'd like to say I was able to watch every dart that was thrown, but that just wasn't the case. It was a travel weekend for me. I did manage to catch some matches here. I did get a chance to watch the final. I can't. Dave is just he's great. He's probably no one is surprised over here that Dave Cameron went and made history. He's a name we know he can score with the best. We've seen it. Frankly, and he would admit this, that, in the past, his doubles have kind of sometimes deserted him at key moments. But as he mentioned in all those interviews he's done, his time will come, and it came, right? He put everything together. He beat, not just Phil. Obviously, Phil is the legendary player, but, going through Robert Thornton, the list of players he had to play to get there was no slouch, right? So, I can't be happier for him. He's just a great human being, and I really hope that, he'll take a moment to appreciate it. But I think that he's going to parlay that into a nice little run this coming weekend. I really do.
Well, we'll see. And speaking of a run this coming weekend, let's talk this weekend. It's not just the U.S. Masters, but also the North American Championship, with the winner getting a spot at Ali Pali. First, how pleasing is it, though, to have this event back and at MSG now? And can you also tell us about some of the other routes that are available to qualify for Ali Pali for the players who don't win through that?
Sure. Let me take the second part of that question first. So with the CDC, at the end of our tour, the top-ranked U.S. player on our tour points list for the year will earn a spot to the Ali Pali, to the World Darts Championships, the top U.S. player and the top Canadian. So we're guaranteed at least those two spots coming from the CDC. And, of course, as you mentioned, coming up this weekend, we'll have the North American Darts Championship that will select a third North American representative to the to the Ali Pali. And how can you look at MSG and say anything other than wow? The Hula Theater, the Paramount Theater, is just legendary in terms of sport. Some of the best fights in the world have been held, in that arena. So it's going to be great being there. That the sense of history is going to be big, I think, with anybody that understands what the venue is. And, there's going to be a New York Rangers hockey game being played at the same time we're playing, and they're going to be playing right upstairs. The ice is actually right on top of this theater. So I'm interested to see how that's going to play out. If the noise is going to, end up bleeding through, it's going to be interesting to see. But I mean, you can't pick a better venue for sport in North America. You just can't.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was looking at tickets for that, though they were over $400. I was thinking about skipping the darts and going to the hockey, but that may be because I'm a Rangers fan. Now, I think when we last spoke to you, you said you were 5 years into a 3-year plan or something to that effect. Obviously, most of the time since then has been a challenge for everyone to grow a business with the pandemic. But how are things now? And is the dart scene getting back to how it was pre-pandemic?
It is. Our first weekend, our first CDC weekend was just fantastic. It was the first time really that the U.S. and Canadian players were back in the same venue, right? I mean, we never stopped playing. We had events in 2020 behind closed doors where we were able to run, the U.S. series and the Canada series, we called it at the time, to be able to send our representatives to the World Championship. We ran a split tour last year in 2021, which I'm really proud of our team for being able to pull all of this off in the middle of a pandemic. So we were able to qualify players last year as well and give them the competition. But certainly, this year, having everybody back in the same room, there's a sense of relief. And there was certainly a sense of excitement. A lot of just people catching up after being apart for so long. It was great to watch, great to be a part of. Is it back to where it was pre-pandemic in other ways? Yeah, I mean, I will say this. One of the things we know is that online play became a thing, right? The entire industry kind of pivoted to become an online industry during the pandemic. And I think that you're going to continue to see online play be a thing. We're talking about ways that we can supplement and we can include part of that into our world. Although that's, candidly, that's not our bread and butter. Our bread and butter is putting, again, the top players into the same room where they're breathing down each other's neck. They're creating those pressure situations that you just don't have at home. And, trying to really find the best of the best. So online play is here to stay, I believe. But it's nice to see people getting back into true in-person play as well. And that's not just at CDC, it's across the board.
And then lastly, I'm sure a lot of your current focus is on this upcoming weekend, but looking a little further ahead, what plans does the CDC have for the future? And are there any goals that you have to continue making strides to forward the game in North America?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of plans. Our motto kind of is make no small plans. My partner, Anthony Eugenia, has a notebook of all the ideas he draws up. And, it's funny because we have these weekly meetings or sometimes daily meetings and, he'll bring an idea and I'm like, I love that idea, but, it's always the but because we got to find time to fund it and source it, right, and staff it. But one of the things that came out of his mind, we discussed is kind of creating this second, I don't want to say second tier, that's not the right way to put it, but this regional tour that kind of sits below CDC, where people can go to events in their area and compete against non-tour card holders. This wouldn't be for tour card holders, but it would be for those players that wanted to kind of test their skills against the next level, the one that's just slightly down. And then we'd create that as kind of a farm system for CDC. Again, we're not getting rid of the Q school idea, but we want to create those opportunities for people to get together regionally. It lowers travel cost, it lowers entry cost, it lowers hotel cost, it lowers all that stuff. And we're committed to doing that sometime. I originally said 23. It may be 24 before that happens, but it certainly is, on our mind. We're talking about potentially expanding the tour to additional locations next year. I can't guarantee it's going to happen. It's one of those things, again, it's with enough time and enough money and enough staffing, anything is possible. But certainly those are on our mind as well. So, we're already deep into planning for 2023 and 2024 as well. And certainly, I've been running some ideas past Matt Porter at the PDC. He and I talk pretty much weekly. And, they're really happy with kind of the way things are going over here. So I take solace in that. And, we know that we're going to move on and continue to do everything we can for the player base here.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for your time and safe travels to New York and best of luck this weekend.
Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful. And, thanks to we listen to your podcast all the time. It's great to hear you guys and appreciate the opportunity to be on with you.
Thanks to Peter for joining us this week. Now we'll finish off with the U.S. Masters. This question, Hannah, who co-hosted last week, she's, of course, our producer, and I discussed this pretty much this exact same question. So I'm not going to answer it, but I do want your take on it, Christopher. Of the 8 North American qualifiers, of course, that being the 4 tour card holders and the 4 that won through at the CDC weekend a few weekends ago in Indianapolis, which of those 8 do you think has the best game right now, not just to maybe get a scalp, but to go on a deep run in New York?
Well, this is quite an interesting edition of the World Series, because when the tournament was initiated nearly 10 years ago, you were expecting the first round to just be a slaughterfest. The best players turning up in a foreign city and just destroying the local competition, which had not developed to a point where there was any parity between the competitors. I think that's changed, both in the sense that the level of the local players has advanced, and that none of the eight invited players from the PDC are showing that they can reasonably be expected to destroy any comers. So that really opens up a really special opportunity for many of these players who have never before appeared on TV and who can really make a name for themselves in knocking off a top player. And as far as I'm concerned, the most likely player to do that at the moment is Matt Campbell of Canada. He's drawn Gerwyn Price in the first round, and Gerwyn Price's form being totally out of whack for the past 6 months, and with Matt Campbell's year-to-date average standing at about 92, and his having one of the highest doubles percentages of any tour card holder in the PDC, Canadian, North American, or European. I think there's a lot of potential for a very surprising upset to go on there. And to be honest, I look at the list of players, and with the possible exceptions of Michael Smith and maybe Johnny Clayton, I can't really see any of these matches being 6-0 whitewashes or even anything close to that. These all of the invited players from North America are gentlemen who regularly average mid-80s to mid-90s in local events and CDC events, even on the Pro Tour when they win tour cards. Danny Baggish has been doing it for years. Jules Van Dongen has been doing it. Jeff Smith has been doing it for many. It was really one of the pioneers for doing this after John Part, of course. If we expect to see similar performances to the Premier League from players like Peter Wright and Gary Anderson and Michael Verkerwen, then any of these guys have a chance to knock off the top dogs. We're not expecting to see MVG average 110, though he certainly could. It just seems less likely that would happen, and it seems much more likely that he would get into a dogfight with Danny Lobby, and we could have a quite an exciting upset for a young player on our hands. So I would say if I had to pick one, it would be Matt Campbell, but I really wouldn't rule out any of them.
That's not too different from what I said last week, obviously a lot more statistical analysis that you provided there. Anything else, though, for this week that you'd like to say?
Well, what I would like to say is that after 6 years of being in darts, I will actually be attending my first PDC event at Madison Square Garden for the U.S. Masters. So if any of your listeners are planning to attend, I would be eager and delighted to meet them if they decide to make the trip to New York as well.
Yeah, and I'm undecided if I'm going to attend as of the time we're recording, but obviously would love to meet you if I do attend. If not, at some point, obviously now that I'm living in D.C., it's not as far as when I was living in Houston from you. But thank you so much for sitting in the co-host chair this week. Alex will be back next week to help me recap the U.S. Darts Masters and look ahead to the World Cup and some other events coming up. Try to bring on some guests who will be participating in the World Cup. Hopefully sometime to get you back on, Christopher, either as a co-host or as one of our guests sometime this year. It was long overdue to get you back. I do hope you enjoy your time in New York at the World Series event. But for everyone else, we will be back next week. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the darts and hang tight till then. And yeah.